Good morning everyone, this is Jaimini Astrology channel. Today's episode is for people who've got genuine interest in Jaimini Astrology, putting it differently, for students who are serious about the subject and no one else. Before we start using Jaimini Astrology, we need to prepare our horoscope accordingly. What do I mean by that? We need to mark some important points in a horoscope before we start doing our Jaimini Astrology successfully. That's why I emphasized that this episode is only for people who are serious students of Jaimini Astrology, okay? And I'll guide you step by step what important factors we need to distinguish in our horoscope before we start applying Jaimini Astrology, okay? So what you see in front of you on the screen is not a mistake, and I'll explain that through, okay? We'll start from the first thing, what we need to distinguish in our horoscope. The first important factor which we need to mark is Karakamsha Lagna. What is our Karakamsha Lagna? This is the position of your Atma Karaka in the Navamsha, but marked in a birth chart, in Rashi. Okay, so look what I'm doing right now. Okay, here in that particular horoscope we've got Atma Karaka Shukra, yeah, found in the 8th house in the sign of Rishabha. Okay, so let's have a look at the degrees. It is marked as 28, 21. Here I'm explaining. Below the Rashi, you do not see the Navamsha. Yeah? Why I've done it? Because throughout the years I was testing, obviously, many different astrological softwares. Some of these softwares might not show you the positions, especially when it comes to positions of grahas in divisional charts, correctly. There are mistakes, so you cannot rely 100% on astrological softwares, okay? Because you won't be aware if there are any mistakes in placements of your grahas in divisional charts when you blindly follow the software, yeah? So usually what I'm doing when I've got someone's horoscope in front of me, yeah, I don't simply look at the Navamsha. I do the Navamsha myself, yeah. I just check the degrees in the birth chart horoscope and I prepare Navamsha myself, okay? So have a look. You've got Shukra at 28, 21 in the sign of Rishabha. So what will be the placement of Atma Karaka in the Navamsha? You see, this is the last Navamsha here, the last Navamsha of Rishabha or Taurus. So the placement of Atma Karaka in the Navamsha will be obviously Kanya, yeah, the last Navamsha. Okay, so what we do, we take that placement of Atma Karaka in the Navamsha, yeah, and we mark it as Karakamsha, yeah, in the Rashi. We mark it as KL. So that is our Karakamsha Lagna, yeah, the position of your Atma Karaka in the Navamsha marked in a Rashi. So I suggest you do the same with your horoscope. Yeah? So that's the first important factor which we need to distinguish in our chart before we start using Jaimini astrology. Okay? So we've got our Karakamsha Lagna. Then another important thing which we need to find is something which we call Aruda Lagna. Yeah, another separate Lagna. Aruda Lagna, or some people call it Pada Lagna. Okay, how to find your Aruda Lagna or Pada Lagna? First, you need to just give me a second. I'll change the color. Okay, we need to obviously know our Lagna, and we need to see how many places from the Lagna its Lord traveled. Okay, here we've got Lagna in Tula. The Lagna Lord is obviously Shukra. So Shukra has traveled 8 places, yeah, from Lagna. So we need to count the same amount of places from the position of Lagna Lord, and then we'll receive our Aruda Lagna. Okay, so let's count from Shukra the same amount, yeah, which is 8. So we're counting Vrishaba 1, Mituna 2, Karka 3, Simha 4, Kanya 5, Tula 6, yeah, Rishika 7, and Danu 8. And here we've got it marked as Aruda Lagna, AL. Yeah? So once again, in order to find Aruda Lagna, we do not follow any exceptions. Here we follow simply the rules given by K.N.Rao. Okay? So one more time. First, we need to know our Lagna. Then we need to check how many places the Lagna Lord traveled from the Lagna. Then when we find the Lagna Lord, we need to count the same amount of places from the position of Lagna Lord to arrive at our Aruda Lagna. Yeah? So here, as we've seen, the Lagna Lord traveled 8 places, 8 Rashis from the Lagna. Then, so from the position of Lagna Lord, we need to count the same amount, yeah, in order to arrive at our Aruda Lagna, which here falls in the sign of Danu. Yeah, that's our Aruda Lagna. Okay, some people call it obviously Pada Lagna. Yeah. Then we need to, just give me a second, I'll change the color. We need to find all the Arudas, yeah, for the chart. You see on the screen, you've got them marked as A6, A8, A7, yeah, A2, etc., etc. The rule is the same, yeah. Let's pick Aruda of the 11th. Yeah, I'll show you how to do it by choosing a few Arudas. Okay, let's pick Aruda of the 11th house. Okay, so 11th house falls in the sign of Simha, which is here. So we need to see how many places the Lord of the sign traveled, yeah, from its own sign or house. Yeah, so let's count. Simha 1, yeah, then Kanya 2, Tula 3, Vrishika 4, Danu 5, Makara 6, Kumbha 7, Mina 8, Mesha 9, and Vrishaba 10. So we've got the ruler, the owner of the sign of Simha, 11th house, yeah, Shurya in Rishabha, 10 Rashis away, yeah. So in order to arrive at the Aruda of the 11th house, we also need to count the 10 places, okay? So let's count. 1, Mithuna 2, Karka 3, Simha 4, Kanya 5, Tula 6, Vrishika 7, Danu 8, Makara 9, and Kumbha 10. The rule is the same as we found our Aruda Lagna. You see here, this is A11, Aruda of the 11th house. Yeah? So I'll repeat. You need to find how many places Rashis, the lord of the sign, has moved away or traveled from the sign house it governs. Yeah? And then when you find the position of the ruler of the house or the Rashi, you need to count the same amount of places from its own placement. Okay, let's do another Aruda. Okay, so I think it should be clear. Let's pick up. Let's say, okay, we'll do Aruda of the 6th. Okay, Aruda of the 6th. Okay, so the 6th house is obviously here. Yeah, in Mina. Yeah, the ruler of the sign, we need to find obviously Guru. Where is Guru? As we can see, Guru is found in Kanya. Yeah, so Guru, the owner of the sign of Mina, has moved 7 places away from the Rashi it rules. Yeah, simple counting. Yeah, so we need to count the same amount from its placement in order to find our Aruda. Okay, so simple counting, 7 places, yeah, which gives us, just give me a second, yeah, give me a second, which will give us sign of Mina, yeah, as the Aruda of the 6th house, yeah, very simple. Okay, let me clear that picture, sorry, I'll erase all of that. Okay, it's very simple, and we'll do one more Aruda. Okay, we'll do one more Aruda. Just give me a second. Okay. Okay. Let's choose Aruda of the 9th house. Okay. So the 9th house falls in Mithuna, which is here. Then we need to find how many places Rashis, the lord of the sign, has traveled, has moved away from its own Rashi, yeah, from its own house. But you can see that the ruler of the house, yeah, sits in its own house. It is Buddha, yeah, the lord of the 9th house, found in its own Rashi, in its own house, in the 9th house. So you don't need to do any counting here. In that situation, Aruda of the 9th house will be in the sign of Mithuna, in the same place, and that will be our Aruda of the 9th house. Yeah, so this way we need to find all of the Arudas. Okay, but here that's not everything. Okay, we need to focus on 2 very important Arudas. Okay, so first one is Aruda of the 7th house. We call it as Dara Pada. We need to mark it in our birth horoscope. Yeah, it's very important Aruda. We call it as Dara Pada. Okay, so let's find our Dara Pada, which is Aruda of the 7th house. Okay, so let's have a look. 7th house falls in the sign of Mesha here. Okay, so we need to see how many signs, rashis, houses, places the Lord of the house has moved away. So let's see where is Mangala, the owner. Yeah, so we see Mesha 1, then Rishabha 2. We found the Lord of our 7th house, 2 rashis away. So we need to count the same amount from its own placement. Okay, so we count from Rishabha 1 and 2, and here we've got our Aruda of the 7th house in the sign of Mituna. Yeah, and we mark it as Darapada. Okay, we mark it as Darapada in our horoscope. Okay, this is very important Aruda. Okay, which we call Darapada. Okay, let me clear that picture, and we'll focus on the last very important Aruda. Okay, let me just change the color here. Okay, what we need to do, we need to find our Upapada Lagna. What is our Upapada Lagna? In practice, this is simply the Aruda of the 12th house. So our 12th house falls in the sign of Kanya. Yeah, sign of Kanya. So we need to count how many places the Lord, the owner of the sign, has moved from the sign it rules. So let's count. Kanya 1, Tula 2, yeah, Rishika 3, Danu 4, Makara 5, Kumbha 6, Mina 7, Mesha 8, then Rishabha 9, and Mituna 10. Here is the Lord of the 12th house, which is Buddha. Yeah, so we know Buddha has moved 10 places away, okay, from the 12th house. Then what we need to do, we need to count the same amount, yeah, from its own placement in order to arrive at Upapada Lagna, which is Aruda of the 12th house. So let's count. Mituna 1, Karka 2, Simha 3, Kanya 4, Tula 5, Rishika 6, Danu 7, Makara 8, Kumbha 9, and Mina 10. And as you can see, we've got it marked as UL, which is Upapada Lagna. And Upapada Lagna is obviously Aruda of the 12th house. Okay, very simple. We need to know all of that. We need to mark of those very extremely important factors in a horoscope. I'm repeating that before we start to use our Jaimini astrology, yeah, on a particular horoscope. Yeah, it is inevitable. Yeah, it is a must. Okay, so let me clear the picture. Okay, I would strongly suggest you do all the same what I've already done on your own horoscope in order to practice. Okay, so just give me a second, I'll change the color. Okay, and we will focus on the last important factor which we need to distinguish in the horoscope. This is what we call Dara Karaka Navamsha. Yeah? Dara Karaka Navamsha. What is Dara Karaka Navamsha? You remember we talked, as the first thing, we talked about Karakamsha Lagna. Yeah? Now we need to find our Dara Karaka. Yeah? Dara Karaka in the Navamsha. The placement of Dara Karaka in the Navamsha in order to establish our Dara Karaka Navamsha. Okay, so let's have a look. Dara Karaka in this horoscope is Mangala, yeah, found in first degree 143 as it's marked, but technically, yeah, practically, technically, call it as you like. This is the second degree, but it is marked as 143. So Mangala, our Dara Karaka, is found in the sign of Rishabha, in the 8th house. So we need to find its placement in the Navamsha. You see, yeah, its position 143 of Rishabha. So what will be the Navamsha of Dara Karaka? You need to find the Navamsha of Dara Karaka, yeah, and put it into our Rashi. Mark it in our Rashi. Okay, so the Navamsha of Dara Karaka falls obviously in the sign of Makara, because this is the first Navamsha of Rishabha. Yeah, so we just mark it in a horoscope as Dara Karaka Navamsha. Yeah, we mark it like that. Dara Karaka Navamsha. Okay, it is very, very important. Yeah, that's why I covered here, as you can see. It was not a mistake. I covered here, yeah, all the positions of Caracas in the Navamsha. Yeah, because it is very important to know, to have it in mind, to understand how the horoscope works, yeah, to be able to know the position of grahas in the Navamsha just by simply looking at the degrees in your birth chart, and not to rely on astrological software, because sometimes, there are mistakes made. Me personally, many years ago, when I was starting my journey with Jyotisha, I noticed it at least a few times. For instance, the placement of my Atmakaraka, yeah, which is Shukra, yeah, I talked about that. It was marked, for instance, as Tula Navamsha, yeah, which is obviously wrong. If you wouldn't know that, you would follow it blindly, yeah. So that's the difference. But coming back to that Shukra, we're talking about Karakamsha Lagna, okay? Just give me a second. One more time. You see the position of Shukra, 28, 21 of Rishabha, yeah? So knowing that, how to establish positions of your Karakas Grahas in the Navamsha without looking into Navamsha, yeah, it makes it all clear, yeah. You see 28, 21, so this is the last Navamsha of Rishabha, yeah. What is the last Navamsha of Rishabha, yeah, as in that earthy trine, the last have a look. You've got that trine, yeah, which is Makara, which is Rishaba, which is Kanya. Yeah. If we talk about this triangle, the last Navamsha is always of Kanya when we talk about those three signs. Yeah, always the last Navamsha falls in Kanya. That kind of information you should have, you should learn, you should have it in your mind. Yeah, obviously, instead of relying on astrological software blindly. Okay, so to conclude today's episode, yeah, before we start using, applying our Jaimini astrology on a horoscopes, yeah, you need to know about those special, very important points which we need to distinguish in a horoscope in order, to be able, to apply Jaimini astrology correctly, being precise. Yeah, you need to have this awareness. Yeah, so please watch it, learn it, understand how to, distinguish those special points. I'll repeat. We talked about Karakamsha Lagna. Here, obviously, Karakamsha Lagna falls in the sign of Kanya. Yes, in the sign of Kanya, we found our Aruda Lagna, which fell in the sign of Danu. We found all the Arudas. We've learned how to distinguish, how to establish the Arudas of all houses. When it comes to Arudas, what I need to add, we do our counting clockwise when it comes to establishing Arudas. No backwards, no anti-clockwise counting, always counting clockwise when it comes to establishing Arudas, always clockwise. Yeah, so we found our Darapada, yeah, which is Aruda of the seventh, which fall in the sign of Mituna. We found our Upapada Lagna, yeah, which falls in the sign of Mina, yeah, and we found obviously our Darakaraka Navamsha, okay, and this is a must. You need to distinguish these factors before you start using Jaimini astrology seriously, okay. So I'm going to finish today's episode. Take care, God bless, and I think if I'll have more time today, I'll record some more episodes today. Take care and good luck.